The Cleveland and Fort Wayne lines both saw their beginnings over the course of the 1850s, both connecting Pittsburgh with Chicago. The first of which to be opened was the Cleveland Line in 1852, which takes the Low Road by following the Ohio River between Beaver, PA and Yellow Creek, Ohio. At Yellow Creek, the line turns northwest and junctions with the Fort Wayne Line in Alliance. This line is owned by the Cleveland and Pittsburgh Railroad, which was created in 1836 simply because the public wanted a route between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. The newer Fort Wayne line was fully opened by 1853 under ownership of the Pittsburgh, Fort Wayne, and Chicago Railway. This line kinda took the high road by traveling through places such as New Brighton, Homewood, New Galilee, Enon, and then across the border into Ohio, where it would also junction with the Cleveland Line in Alliance. Both lines would end up being leased to the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Cleveland Line in 1871 and the Fort Wayne Line in 1869. The PRR would operate the old C&P main under a permanent lease, which gave them full access to Cleveland, and for the next 100 years would run coal, iron ore, and other mineral trains from the Ohio River Valley to Cleveland. The Fort Wayne, after being leased to the Pennsy in 1869, was subleased to Pennsylvania Lines, which was a major holding company, on April 1st, 1871. This company operated it until January 1st, 1918, when the lease went back to the PRR. The Fort Wayne heading due west of Alliance was less favored than the C&P main, which headed northwest, so by the time the Pennsy and longtime rival New York Central merged in 1968 to form Penn Central, trains were being routed out of Pittsburgh via the northern Fort Wayne route through New Galilee, Brighton, Enon, all of those places, and then turning northwest in Alliance to head through Rootstown, Ravenna, Hudson, Macedonia, Bedford, and eventually into Cleveland. And then the thing happened. Penn Central filed for bankruptcy in 1972, and the pieces of these lines wouldn't be picked up until Conrail came along in 1976. By the 1980s, the lines were once again profitable operations thanks in part to the Staggers Rail Act. Conrail soon began to upgrade the C&P signals between Cleveland and Alliance, as anything going to and from Chicago on the Fort Wayne would be moved to that part of the line. When the CR became the CSAO in 1999, Norfolk Southern would obtain both lines and continue running their trains on the same routing. This is what we'll be focused on today. We begin in Berea, Ohio. The reason I included this location is because not only is it close to Cleveland, but it's a hotspot where not just two main lines, but two railroads converge. CSX on the Cleveland Short Line sub in the foreground, and Norfolk Southern on the Chicago line in the background. The old Berea Tower still stands guard over the junction, but there's nobody in there controlling it. Who does it now? Well, thanks to new and improved technology, that job is now in the hands of NS's Cleveland East dispatcher in Atlanta, Georgia, and CSX's IG dispatcher in Jacksonville, Florida. All of the technology needed for the signals and switches here are now stored in two signal bungalows. One right here at milepost QDS 21.7 on the short line, and milepost CD 194 on the Chicago line. Our first train of the day is NS 21Z, daily mixed intermodal from Rutherford, Pennsylvania to Chicago, Illinois, with a shiny C6M trailing second. Up next is a race between CSX M204 with a rare YN2-9 trailing and NS 66R with BNSF and CN trailing second and third. Two older Union Pacific units trail on Manifest 310 heading towards Rockport Yard for a crew change. And now another meet, this time with westbound 35N and eastbound 206, both with BNSF units. Rockport is NS's main yard in Cleveland and major crew change point for trains of the Cleveland Line, Lake Erie District, and Chicago Line. It's not a big yard, as only 3 trains originate and terminate here, those being the C89, C97, and whatever the Rockport to Campo Road turn is. I don't know if that's still C22 or not. This is the first time that I've ever seen intermodal containers in Rockport. I would discover a week or two later that 26T was being reinstated and counterpart 27T was born, running between Rockport and Ayer, Massachusetts as an intermodal manifest combo. However, after no less than 2 runs of these trains, I've heard absolutely nothing more on them. I guess they're abolished? I don't know, they haven't ran in quite a while. We have a nicer view of them now, but once we go onto this next bridge, we'll have a much better view. Positioned next to the yard tower and yard office, we catch NS C15, the Rockport switcher, consisting of a slug set made up of NS GP59E number 4654, painted for Operation Lifesaver, RP M4C road slug number 620, and GP38-3 5805. This is the NS 310 that we just caught in Berea. Now, having been tied down, this train is awaiting a new crew to take it east on the Lake Erie District and Southern Tier lines to Binghamton, New York. At Drawbridge, we narrowly miss a 26E in dynamics as it heads east with more UP power on it. As the bridge slowly lifts up and eventually the Good Time 3 passes under it, I'd like to acknowledge that, yes, I know there's a better vantage point of this bridge and I know where it is. It's just that by the time we got there, the 26E was already passing through, and once he passed, there was nothing lying through for the next 2 hours, so we didn't bother going over there. So this is all we got. Not to mention, it's $20 just to access the parking lot. Alright, enough ranting. Nicknamed the Iron Curtain Bridge and previously known as the First Flats Rail Bridge, Cuyahoga River Bridge No. 1 was built in 1967 to carry these very rails across the northernmost point of the Cuyahoga River before it spills into Lake Erie. The reason why it's called No. 1 is because it's the farthest downstream on this river. This structure is made mainly of steel and is a through-truss vertical lift bridge. And here we see the Good Time 3 passing under it. I highly recommend this boat. This was pretty fun. I went on it on a field trip in 4th grade. We're up well before the dawn on Friday, July 1st, en route to Amtrak's Cleveland Lakefront Station, where Lakeshore Limited 48 and 49 and Capital Limited 29 and 30 all service Cleveland, Ohio.
And yesterday, the person believed me had a drug test, so I was way later than normal, just around 6:20, 6:25. Yeah, we'll probably talk to you here a little bit and then try to leave.
We've not even made it to the station platform yet, and already another train is about to roll by. It's westbound 21T, daily Harrisburg to Kansas City intermodal, with an increasingly rare thoroughbred -9 in the lead.
Stay showing 70. It's a 3-step applied. Copy that, Matt. 74 on the rear. Step applied. Okay, rear right side, thank you.
Yeah, don't walk too far back.
Here's something to note about the mileposts on this line. Up until this point, we've been on the Chicago line, or CD line, or if you really want to be specific, the ex-New York Central's water level route to Buffalo, New York. The track right in front of us heading east leads to CP 181, the 181 denoting that we are 180 miles away from the route's terminus in Buffalo. But here's the catch, we're not following the water level route. We're following the old C&P and PFW&C mains to Conway and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Therefore, once you get east of Cleveland, the milepost numbers drop about 40 miles, from CD 181 to RD 122. That's because this is the Chicago CD line's easternmost point, and the Cleveland RD line's westernmost point. If you follow the Amtrak lead at 181, you'll end up on CSX's Cleveland Terminal and eventually Erie West Subdivision, the QD line to Buffalo. But the only trains that use this routing are Amtrak's Lakeshore Limited 48 and 49. Any other train would keep straight at Drawbridge and enter the RD line. So we go from being 181 miles from Buffalo, New York, to being 122 miles from Conway, Pennsylvania. The Cleveland East Dispatcher has lit up the signal at 181 for Amtrak's eastbound Lakeshore Limited Train 48. The signal bridge behind it is CP 122 over on the Cleveland line. The local news station's traffic helicopters are all taking off to go on patrol of our roadways. This is Fox 8 News' Sky Fox with anchor Patty Harkin and pilot Dan Kukurzinski going on their routine morning flight. At 6:01 in the morning, running approximately 21 minutes late, here comes Amtrak 48, the eastbound Lakeshore Limited out of Chicago, Illinois, bound for New York Penn Station. Up until late July 2022, Norfolk Southern had their own custom call signs for Amtrak trains on their system. In 48's case, their call sign was 08T. But now all of the 0 series symbols on Norfolk Southern have been abolished, and therefore Amtrak just refers to itself now as Amtrak 48. Once it enters CSX, though, it becomes PO 48, P standing for passenger. the engineer climbs off of his P-42 and heads to the station for some coffee. This man has been up since probably around 9-ish last night, so he must be tired. If you watch the trailer to this, you'll know that my ultimate railroad dream was to shoot this documentary. Little did I know that I'd eventually fulfill multiple smaller dreams while in the process. This is one of those, as I've always wanted to shoot Amtrak service in Cleveland, and this documentary was the perfect opportunity to do that. The engineer returns to his locomotive with coffee in hand. You'll hear the conductor inside the coaches ask for a boarding whistle. This is where the engineer honks the horn to let people know that if they need to be on the train, they better be on it. And if they need to be off, well, they better be off.
Good morning.
One improved, let me know when. 40 out. Can I get a 40 whistle?
Once the platform is clear, the conductor notifies the head end to let him know that they're clear to depart Cleveland and head on to CSX.
Alright, we're to Amtrak 48 head in. Baseball complete, okay to depart Cleveland. Signal indication. There we go, Amtrak 48 departing Cleveland on the clear 181. Let's go to channel 50. Over. West to 1, 2, team, GB6040.
We're now on to the Cleveland RD line at CP117. A CSX intermodal is seen passing by on the nearby Cleveland Terminal subdivision. I will warn you though that 117 is in quite the sketchy neighborhood and isn't the most hospitable of spots. I think the only thing it's good for is not only the trains, but the fact that the Cleveland Commercial Short Line crosses over the Cleveland line here. The CCR, now owned by Omnitrax, runs east out of Cleveland and interchanges with the Wheeling and Lake Erie and Glen Willow, and also runs to Solon, and works multiple industries in between. The signal on track 1 is high green for a super early NS 16G, clearing yard in Chicago, Illinois, bound for Conway, PA. Now, I'm not a big liker of the new C6M locomotives. I don't think anyone is, really. But there are a few select units that I do like, and one of them is the leader of this train, NS 4179, equipped with a nicely tuned Nathan P5 horn. this stretch of track between RD-122 and RD-110 is all on an uphill, and that's why you see heavy trains like this struggling. Once you get east of 110, it's mostly a downhill trip the rest of the way to Conway.
363, switch slide on back normal Conway, here with the westbound, over. Roger out.
About 15 minutes later, another train running early. NS 546 has a nice ES44 DC leader on it as it heads west with coal loads to Monroe, Michigan. NS 1024 and SD70 Ace lend some muscle to this mile-long coal train as it prepares to enter Cleveland. Passing by CP 114, we catch an empty grain train heading west with NS 1036 leading. 1036 was involved in the wreck with NS 4001 on 593 in Macedonia, Pennsylvania. It has since been returned to service a long time ago, along with the 4001. CP-112 marks the west end of NS's Maple Heights intermodal facility. Just across the tracks and down below, the Cleveland commercial main to Glen Willow paces the Cleveland line for the next 3 or so miles. Maple Heights isn't huge as it only gets 2 over-the-road trains a day, those being the 20R to Port Newark and 21G to Ashland Avenue, Chicago on BNSF. First in line is NS 11N, empty autoracks out of Doramus, New Jersey for Sterling Heights, Michigan, with a solo ace leader and an unusually short train. Behind him is NS 23M, Croxton, New Jersey to Global 2 Chicago on Union Pacific, with none other than a Union Pacific Jiva second out. A little while later, the signal at 112 lit up restricting, which means proceed, being able to stop within half the range of your vision, and in no case faster than 15 miles an hour. Something was about to enter the yard. That being the newly instated L15, daily Sandusky to Maple Heights intermodal turn. Now here's why this train exists. It works in correspondence with the NS 20R. What used to happen is that 20R would pull up to 110 and then proceed to do pickups and drop-offs, which would take between 2 to 4 hours and block the East Grace and West Glendale Railroad crossings. Now, all Maple Heights traffic on this train is dropped off in Sandusky, where the L15 comes out, picks it up, and takes it to Maple Heights and yards it via the west end of the yard here at 112. The 20R still works Maple Heights, but instead of doing both pickups and drop-offs, it just does pickups. It still works out of the east end at 110, but it doesn't block the crossings for nearly as long. And I bet some of you are wondering what a Lake Division symbol is doing all the way on the Keystone Division. Well, this train originates in Lake Division territory, so it's naturally going to have an L prefix on it. And one more thing, notice how long this train is. This all came off of NS 20R, and had this train not existed, 20R would easily be here for 4 hours trying to yard this stuff. Now, if you watch my channel regularly, you'll know that I'm literally always in Bedford. We're at East Grace Street at RD 109.9, just a quarter of a mile away from CP 110 in the east end of Maple Heights Yard. This spot has a special place in my heart, as this is where I was first introduced to trains by my grandparents, and ever since I was a little kid, we'd come out here religiously to see trains. And of course, I still do that to this day. This 21Q is eventually going to meet the 20E, which is daily 63rd Street Chicago to Croxton, New Jersey intermodal, with a KCS GEVO trailing second out. Now with the merger of CP and KCS, those are eventually going to go away, so I suggest you get any KCS unit while you can. The wind picks up a cloud of dust at the Carr Brothers concrete plant in Northfield at CP 107. The first ever AC-44 C6M to exist is NS 4000. Today it's seen on the helm of NS 572 out of Shire Oaks, crossing from Main 2 to Main 1 as it heads west towards Bedford. As the train passes, a health hazard is created. The wind and the dust from the concrete plant has mixed with the cold, causing some coal dust, and can be toxic to your lungs if inhaled. Between Bedford and Northfield, the tracks really begin to open up, and track speed naturally increases. For now, expect some faster running, at least until we get to the border. Here's a train that I always enjoy seeing. NS-89, the Rockport to Hudson turn with two GP38-3s on it, the 5814 followed by the 5804. Just past the bridge is the IDS warehouse, an industry along this line that this local serves. This train's currently making a drop-off here.
That will do.
The conductor of this train is on the ground, instructing the engineer when to stop, when to pull forward, when to reverse, etc., etc. The track that we're standing on is the old Twinsburg branch to an industry park known as the Crown, which this local also serves. Also on the Twinsburg branch is Try More Cement Company, which gets an occasional rock train every now and then, the 68D, although I haven't heard of it running so far this year.
Down, coming back with 8 starters. Double check. 1 switch, 1 derail.
Just listen to these Jeeps rev. It's clear this engineer knows how to work the throttle. As C-89 continues to back in, here comes NS-20T, daily Kansas City to Harrisburg intermodal with a J.B. Hunt 1 million container in the consist. This train is counterpart to the 21T that we witnessed earlier in Cleveland. Watch how the locomotives bounce right over the junction as it descends downhill. In Hudson, we catch a train that I haven't seen in a while, NS-62G hauling stone loads for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Back in the days when thoroughbred Dash 9s were new and Pennsylvania position lights roamed the Cleveland line, this spot used to be known as Control Point Hudson here at RD 96. The track in front of us was and is still a Y that leads to the old Akron IT branch of the PRR, which passes through Kent, Stowe, Monroe Falls, and Cuyahoga Falls, having been abandoned in the early 2000s by Norfolk Southern. This timetable from 1999 shows that all control points on this part of the Cleveland line had actual names, before having been renamed to their corresponding mileposts between 2001 and 2006, some having even been moved miles from their original locations. As such was the case for CP Hudson. It was completely taken out and moved 2 miles to the east to RD 94, where the new control point, CP 94, is now located, and still remains to this day. The Y in front of us is no longer a controlled junction, now a dark lead with hand throw switches used to store maintenance of way equipment. The branch this Y leads to is home to the famous Doodlebug disaster that occurred in Cuyahoga Falls approximately 82 years ago when a self-propelled passenger car of the Pennsylvania Railroad struck a high-balling manifest at a combined speed of 55 miles an hour, killing 43 people. It's arguably one of the worst train wrecks in Ohio's history. There's a spot just east of here known as Colony Park where there's a bridge that goes over the tracks and you can watch the trains pass right under you. I have a video on that from National Train Day, and if you'd like to see it, it's in the description. My all-time favorite spot on this line is Ravenna, just east of CP86. Here, CSX's Newcastle subdivision passes under the Cleveland line. Here you can get multiple different shots of multiple different railroads. Bridge shots, going away shots, side shots, you name it. There's even a short line, Wheeling and Lake Erie, just north of town. We're at milepost BG 111 on the Newcastle and RD 85.1 on the Cleveland line. Another one of my railroading dreams is shooting Amtrak's Capital Limited in daylight on the Cleveland line, and since both trains run during the middle of the night, I usually never have the opportunity to do that, period. However, that would change on June 15, 2022, when eastbound Train 30 would run approximately 5 hours and 17 minutes behind schedule. I wouldn't figure this out till about 15 minutes before it showed up when I got on the Amtrak app to see it had departed Cleveland a half an hour prior. I then pulled up the Intercity Rail map, in which you can track Amtrak and commuter railroads' live locations, and saw the train passing through Hudson, and so we raced up to the southeastern side of town at NS's Lake Street Railroad crossing. I crossed the tracks to get a wide open shot of this train. A summer rain had fell the night before, and so the morning air was crisp and cool. The birds were just waking up and singing their morning songs. And boy, there's nothing better than the sound of Locomotive 76's K5LA on an early morning like this. It was just perfect. I then heard a horn coming from CSX and just missed a CN100 Tier 4 leading loaded ethanol B773 to Cumberland, Maryland. I filmed this segment on June 15th, 2022. It wasn't originally going to be put into the documentary until I never got around to uploading it, and so I figured I'd just use it here so we didn't have to come back out a second time. Special thank you to my mother for bringing me out here on this day. I'm feeling a little talkative as we get back to where we were at Diamond Street. NS 688, coal loads, is just getting started out of a speed restriction further east down the line. A helper set out of Conway consisting of 2 SD70 ACUs was tagged on to the back of this train to give it a little oomph, that being the NS C90. The reason I like shooting trains here at Diamond Street over Lake Street is because, quite frankly, I don't like missing trains, and I like to be down here by CSX should something come on the 20 train a day Newcastle subdivision. I also like getting these bridge shots of these trains crossing over the road and the railroad, and the Doppler effect of eastbound train horns passing through those trees is the most beautiful thing you'll ever hear. Here's my latest Ravenna video, linked in the description. However, if you want good Doppler, this'll be the place to go, also linked in the description. Now, let's get to what my father calls a coal train, NS 688. Interesting.
They actually lowered these tracks.
Oh yeah, I
So
can kind of see where they did that.
underneath it.
Yeah.
They shut her down for a while and lowered them.
A nice man who's a resident in this area and an Erie Railroad enthusiast gives me a history lesson on the Newcastle subdivision while a shiny C6M leads a 10-hour late 21G bound for BNSF in Chicago, Illinois.
Especially when I see things from my hometown.
Yeah.
That track went running about 8.
Clear, CB86. Check 2 left up. process of putting up the board. Thank you very much.
After 23M, the parade on the Cleveland line would all of a sudden stop, and a small rush would happen on the Newcastle. Counting the B773, I'd see a total of 5 trains on the Newcastle and 4 on the Cleveland line, something I've never done before. Starting us off is E700, heading to Georgia Power's Plant Bowen in Stylesboro, Georgia. Stay tuned for part 2, coming Monday, August 15th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Eastern only on Choo Choo Ben Productions.